Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Monday morning to you all. Hope you guys are doing great out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and great beginning to your new week out there. Here to break down the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise across the entire lower 48 for your Monday. The big topic in this morning's video, of course, is going to be the threat of strong to severe storms across areas of the north central U.S., even the high plains, into the Midwest and the Great Lakes region. So we're going to get very detailed on that right at the beginning of this video, at least the forecast portion of the video. I think the highest risk today is for very strong winds, very large hail, and there's even going to be a pretty decent tornado risk in these areas too. So we're going to break it down state by state, section by section, talk about what's driving this event and all that good stuff for you folks. If you got questions, definitely put them in the comments. If you're confused about the timing and all that stuff, I got you covered. I'll try to get to them by early this afternoon. And we do have a severe weather risk across areas of southern New England that we need to speak on too. But elsewhere, we'll break it all down for you folks. We won't miss anybody and we'll get you guys covered. After we get done doing that, we'll break down updated information on the tropics, as we'll continue to do that, even though there's not really anything that we can track out there right now. There's nothing going on out there in the Atlantic, no areas of interest, tropical depressions, tropical storms, hurricanes, there's nothing. But I am watching a signal that is growing a little bit out there. Nothing too alarming by any means. But we're going to kind of dive into that, speak on the possibilities of this growing into something that's trackable. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put those in the comments below. I'm behind on comments. Typically, I get like that over the weekend, as you guys know. Most of you know. So I'll get to all those comments from over the weekend sometime this afternoon when I get some downtime at work. Asking for prayers for myself. Nothing too crazy or anything. I have a well I don't have city water. I have a well. And I think we're having some issues with it right now. I don't think it's anything too crazy where the actual well pump is going out. But we're definitely having some weird fluctuations with our water pressure. And I think it might be something with the tank or the switch or something like that. So my buddy is going to come out with me Friday. So we got a few days. It's not that we don't have water or anything, so I don't want anybody to be super concerned about it. We have water. It's just weird fluctuation of pressure, water pressure. So he's going to come out. We're going to look at it together. He's definitely more knowledgeable about that kind of stuff, as he's put in whole entire water pumps and systems before. So I'm going to get educated, and hopefully we can get that fixed and figured out. So just asking for prayers for lower anxiety about that and that everything gets worked out, which I know it will be. So thank you for that. Let's get rocking and rolling. So this is what's going on across the entire lower 48. For this morning, we continue to have that pretty decent flow. I mean, a lot of flow over areas of the Rockies, the high plains. So we got a lot of rain falling across areas of the high plains. You got this section of rain in eastern Montana, some rain in western South Dakota. We got some rain down here, just all across the plains areas, especially the high plains. So, you're dealing with that this morning, a rainy start. We got some tropical moisture off the coast of Texas. This is much needed rain. So I do think some of this moisture will push, pretty far inland into Texas by this afternoon. So we're just going to get some scattered downpours and showers and storms that will have an opportunity to happen across south central Texas throughout the afternoon and evening. We got some storm activity sort of surging through southern Ontario this morning, trying to ooze into northwestern PA and sections of northeastern Ohio. A little bit of shower activity over Minnesota. And we have a lot of rain sort of dancing around the state of Maine this morning. We actually have a flash flood warning up right now for sections of Maine. This will kind of drive some energy that will introduce a strong to severe thunderstorm risk across southern New England for later on this afternoon. Then we continue just to have some moisture off the coast of the southeast and around Florida. That's kind of been the same general pattern over the last, really the last several days since this frontal boundary came down and stalled out. But as of now, unfortunately, that nice air mass is beginning to leave us. We still got a nice cool morning out there. I think it's dipped down to about 64, 63 degrees at my house here in Columbia. It's pretty wild how long this air mass lasted for the eastern U.S. Just very impressive for late August standards. But this is what's going on right now as far as watches, warnings, advisories. It's a hot one. I think I heard yesterday when my buddy's out in Nebraska, he tunes into the channel, so maybe he's hearing me talking about him. But I think he said in the Omaha area, it was their hottest day of 2024. I think the dew points got to close to 80 in certain areas with the heat indices, the heat index reaching well over 110 degrees. So ridiculously hot out here. I know in Iowa, the corn sweats, it adds more moisture in the atmosphere, therefore increases the heat index. And yeah, it can get awfully hot out here in the Midwest if you're not familiar with that. But heat advisories in the orange, excessive heat warnings in the hot pink or the purple color. I would say excessive heat watches in that burgundy color, so these could get upgraded to advisories or excessive heat warnings, so we'll watch for that. We do have the heat advisories reissued down here for the southern tip of Florida, so a hot one down here in South Florida, Miami, and everybody surrounding that area. We got flood watches that are continuing up for southeastern Georgia and northeastern areas of Florida. That's been there for a while now. And then we got pockets of flood watches. I might have said flash flood watches. I meant to say flood watches. Then we got flood watches up for a few counties out here across the Rockies. So that's what's going on right now as far as the advisories, watches, warnings. Excessive rainfall outlook. We do have a slight risk across areas of the north central U.S., including the same areas that are going to run the risk of strong to severe storms for the day. In that yellow area, that means that we have a 15% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles at any given point. So just be aware of that. You know, we're going to have, I think, multiple clusters of storms that kind of ride over the same area. So, of course, if they keep hitting your same region, then, you know, once you get 2 or 3 or 4 inches of rain in a pretty short amount of time, it's going to cause flash flooding, as you guys know. So this is the excessive rainfall outlook. Now, talking about the Storm Prediction Center outlook, we're going to zoom into this area up here. So I'm going to kind of go through this pretty fast, and then we're going to zoom in big time and get very detailed for you folks, especially in South Dakota, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. Show you guys some town names on the screen and all that good stuff to get you guys a better idea of what could happen today. But enhanced risk in the orange, that's a level 3 out of 5 for the Storm Prediction Center. In the yellow, that's a level 2 out of 5, a slight risk. The dark green's a level 1 out of 5, a marginal risk. But, you know, we can't leave our friends out in the Mid-Atlantic and New England. We have a marginal risk in that dark green for a good chunk of New England that extends all the way down the I-95 corridor to the Mid-Atlantic for D.C., Baltimore. And we do have a slight risk for Boston, all of Rhode Island, half of Connecticut, most of Massachusetts, even all the way up into southern sections of New Hampshire. But Boston, higher populated area, is included in this level 2 out of 5 slight risk of severe weather. What is this driven off of? There's that tornado risk. We're going to zoom into this. I'm not meaning to kind of run through this really fast. We're just going to zoom into this area here in a second. The wind threat, 15% risk in Boston and surrounding areas of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then there's the red area right here, 30% chance of that. So much higher risk of significant weather in this area here. And then the hail threat, we do have a 15% risk in the Boston area and surrounding regions of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. But here's the much higher threat of hail in this red area out here, which means you have a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So let's go on and zoom in, and this is pretty much when we're going to start to break down the severe weather threat for the north central U.S. for this afternoon to this evening. So let's zoom into, I'm going to get very detailed for you folks. I just want you guys to get a good idea. And guys, just note, they'll issue another update in about a couple hours. I'm making this video is around 6:15 Eastern time. So they'll do another update in about 2.5 hours. This could tweak some. Just know that if you're in the threat area of severe weather, you have a risk of severe weather. Don't get so hyper-focused on what color you're in, but this is where they have higher confidence of severe weather. But here it is. This is South Dakota. Of course, I don't want to spend too long, breaking down each and every state that, runs the risk of severe weather, but just the higher risk areas I do want to zoom into. But this is South Dakota here. And if you're living from this area, hopefully this helps you, but I'm not going to mention every single town. I'll mention a couple. You got Brookings. Aberdeen does have that enhanced risk. The Sioux Falls area. Rapid City has a slight risk. I really think these storms are going to fire up in this area and then kind of sweep west to east. But enhanced risk up, what is this driven off of? We'll kind of zoom back out of this. There's your tornado risk. So, I mean, there's a pretty decent tornado risk in eastern South Dakota today. And this entire brown area, that's where you have a 5% risk of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. The green area, it's a 2% risk. But this is really, the enhanced risk is really driven off the hail and the wind threat. This is the hail threat. If you live in that red area, that's where you have a 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. The yellow area is a 15% risk of that. And if you notice on the map, you got the black outlined area with all the black dashes going in between it right into here. That does include some of the yellow area and pretty much all the red. That's where you have a chance of significant severe weather. So a 10% chance of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. So hurricane force winds, guys. This is a big deal. The wind threat with this is definitely significant, quite literally. The hail threat, if you live in that red area, that is a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. In the yellow area, that is a 15% chance of that. And same thing, the black outline region with the black dashes going in between it, that means you run the risk of significant severe weather, in this case it being hail. So there's a 10% chance of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. So that's considered significant hail by the Storm Prediction Center. Now we scoot over and we look at, I almost called this Wisconsin. Trust me, I know my states. Minnesota. Enhanced risk up for the higher populated region of, obviously the city of Minneapolis, St. Cloud, even down to Rochester, and basically all of the southern half of Minnesota has an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. The far southeastern portion of the state is only in a slight risk, but don't focus too much on that. But man, Minneapolis, St. Cloud area, you guys are under the gun today. So enhanced risk, slight risk extends all the way up into central and areas of kind of north central Minnesota. Duluth, you got it. Tornado risk, there is a 2% risk in the Minneapolis area. You got a 5% risk in the Brown area and southwestern sections of, I keep wanting to almost say Wisconsin. Why do I keep wanting to do that? Minnesota, southwestern sections of Minnesota. 5% risk of a tornado, and then you go down and look at the wind threat, and then that red area, including Minneapolis. Pretty much, you guys are right in the gun of some of the worst potential, the potential for the worst weather today. In the red area, that's where you got a 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour, with also a 10% risk of winds exceeding significant strength, which is 75 miles per hour or higher. So, big wind threat today in this area. And then the hail threat. If you live in that red area, that is a 30% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then it looks like the worst the weather could potentially be in southwestern Minnesota. A 10% risk of hail exceeding 2 inch in diameter or larger. So that's Minnesota. Now we could talk about Wisconsin, because I want to say it so bad. The entire state runs the risk of severe weather today, but of course you got to get into the western sections of the state to see a higher chance of severe weather. In that orange area, that's an enhanced risk, level 3 out of 5. The yellow is a level 2 out of 5, a slight risk. Okay, so, Lacrosse, I think it's Eau Claire is how you pronounce it. I should know that by now. You guys have corrected me on that area, that town, about 1 million times already. But enhanced risk up, level 3 out of 5, and we see what this is driven off of. The tornado threat, not as high in this area. That 2% does kind of sneak into western Wisconsin, but all in all, we don't expect the tornado threat to be higher, as high in Wisconsin as it is to your states to the west. But the wind threat, there it is, getting into Eau Claire. 30% chance of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour, with also a 10% risk of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. And then in the yellow area, that's when you have a 15% risk of that. So the hail threat, not as high in Wisconsin, but that little bit of that red area does kind of ooze into the western sections of Wisconsin, but mainly just the yellow area, which means there's a 15% chance of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So I did want to zoom into those 3 states, not to leave anybody else out. Hopefully, you kind of know what threat area you're thinking about. Like, for example, for northern sections of Iowa, you guys definitely have that risk of severe weather. You kind of go down here and look at northern Iowa. You guys got a risk too, especially in the northern sections of Iowa and also in Nebraska. You guys have to pay attention to for the shot of severe weather. But we got everybody covered in this graphic. Hopefully you can see it pretty well. So we're going to break down what the HRRR model is showing, the short range model guidance that we have for this afternoon. How does it unfold these storms? We'll start off this morning and we get this going. and we take it to about, we're about late morning, midday. We got a little energy surging through the Dakotas, but that's not really what we're paying attention to. This is what we're paying attention to here. These storms get going here in western South Dakota, even in sections of western Nebraska, and this is around 4 or 5 o'clock. Okay, I know you're seeing 7 p.m., but of course, this is in Eastern time, so this is around 5 to 6 o'clock, I would say. You got storms rumbling through the Rapid City area. These could be quite intense. We already have storms sort of firing up ahead of this main area, which I would call it here. We got this lone supercell here in northern Nebraska that could be packing one heck of a punch too, potentially producing a tornado. We got scattered strong to severe storms already forming here in central to west central Minnesota. There's a lot of little clustering of storms ongoing, right? These could be very intense, especially in the southern sections of this kind of cluster of storms. Minneapolis right in here, you got some storms. I mean, what is this? This is around 8 p.m. You got some storms just outside, just west, northwest of the city. And you got this main cluster just still, cruising through. So you stop it here. This is around 9, 10, 11 p.m., give or take an hour one way or the other. You got two main areas. I mean, you got this area down here too, but this area right here and this area right here ongoing. You got a nasty line of storms cruising through South Dakota, mainly South Dakota. This is probably going to ooze a little bit into the northern counties in Nebraska too, but this could be producing very large hail, a damaging wind threat, a tornado threat, and you got these storms back here blasting through like the Minneapolis area and surrounding areas, and these could be producing all hazards too. So this is around 9 p.m. So, I mean, starting to get close to bedtime. And there's a chance that this doesn't really get really bad until after it's getting close to when the sun's starting to set. So, I mean, you take it all the way to about, about midnight. You got this nasty line of storms making its way through, at this point, eastern South Dakota. Could be oozing into northeastern Nebraska too. So this is when you have to watch out for the Sioux Falls, Sioux City area. And look at those storms rumbling through Eau Claire. We'll talk more on Wisconsin here in a second. And this could definitely cause a lot of ruckus as it starts to move into southwestern Minnesota. At this point, it's about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, guys. So Minneapolis could get hit by 2 waves of strong to severe storms in a 24-hour period, which will be spaced apart big time. So first cluster this evening, second might happen like kind of just before the sun comes up tomorrow morning. So that's the timing of it. Just to kind of zoom through that one more time, clusters of storms form, in extreme eastern South Dakota, central Minnesota, by late this afternoon to this evening. Main area kind of cruises across South Dakota, areas of northern Nebraska throughout the late evening, overnight hours, and then eventually it makes it into the southern half of Minnesota as we're getting into the overnight hours into tomorrow morning. So what could these storms do? Well, this is the updraft velocity swath. This indicates where there's rotation with some of these storms. Does not necessarily mean we're going to get a tornado. It just tells us where there's rotation with these storms. So it really likes these clustering of storms, if you will, right in here into especially the central to southern sections of South Dakota into the southern half of Minnesota. We could squeeze out a tornado or two and some of these clusters of storms, especially, folks, if any of these storms could get discrete, like this one lone storm down here in northern Nebraska wants to do. You want to watch areas of like northern and northeastern Nebraska for sure. So talking about winds, guys, this is kind of a combination between both clusters of storms, and it's the same thing with the updraft velocity swath. These storms will have a good bit of wind energy to work with, as mid to upper level flow riding right over this area, creating a lot of lift for these storms and a lot of wind energy for these storms. So kind of that impulsive energy, if you will, aids in really increasing the severe wind risk with these storms. So this is in 1 hour increments. That's why you see these weird gaps right here to right here. So it goes 1 hour to 1 hour. But you're seeing anywhere from 40 to 50 to 60, 70, 80 mile per hour wind gusts. Look right on top of the Minneapolis area. Now, the HRR model is not going to be exact. The HRR model not going to be exact science here, but it puts like an 80 to 90 mile per hour wind gust right over Minneapolis, sometime this evening. So, it's something to watch. They could tweak some of these outlooks But I think for the most part, they got it right on here. Definitely some big time winds with these storms. Large hail too. I don't have really a great graphic for hail, but large hail, wind driven hail is possible with this. And of course, in this area too, you could get a good bit of rain. I don't want to just leave you guys hanging out with the rain, but certainly a good bit of rain is possible, especially in eastern South Dakota and the southern half and the central sections of Minnesota, where maybe as much as 2 inches of rain could fall in certain areas. So if we move a little bit further to the east, this is when we're going to talk more so about maybe Iowa and Wisconsin, and even oozing a little bit into the Great Lakes region. Not a whole lot going on this morning, pretty quiet. We get into this afternoon, still nothing going on. This is about 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. And finally, some storms start to enter western Wisconsin, right where they had the highest risk of severe weather. Eau Claire right here, La Crosse down here. And here comes these storms starting to enter the picture. And listen, I mean, this is around midnight tonight. Eau Claire getting hit hard. Very, very, very hard with some nasty storms. This is looks like almost like a Boeing structure of storms. Could see some significant winds with this. I mean, winds capable of producing 60, 70 mile per hour winds. So just be aware of that. You know, if you live in western to northwestern Wisconsin, and you know, you tuck the kids in for bed, or you lay down for the night after dinner time or whatever, and you're thinking, man, they really busted with the forecast today. Just know that the highest threat of severe weather really isn't in this area until later tonight. So don't let your guard down, please. But, you know, you continue to cruise deeper into the night. Well after midnight, this clustering of storms continues to make its way through central Wisconsin, and it could eventually make it all the way into the UP of Michigan. So my fine folks up here in the UP of Michigan, you could be dealing with some heavy rain, some storms just before the sun comes up tomorrow morning, and you could be dealing with it also as, you know, you're just waking up. And then that next round that kind of moves out of the Dakotas will eventually greet you guys again tomorrow morning into areas of northern Wisconsin too. So we'll have to watch for this, guys. As far as, you know, any sort of tornado threat, you know, I would say it'll be limited in this area just because you're probably lacking a low-level flow. But with any kind of clustering of storms like this, you definitely want to just be aware. So especially as we're getting into after midnight tonight, which, you know, makes it a little bit more dangerous with a nocturnal threat. Well, I guess what I'm trying to say is if your area, county gets under a tornado warning, take it serious, because in Wisconsin and in areas, if it happens here, it'll probably happen more so after the sun goes down. So just be aware of that. And then the winds with this, we'll look at wind gust swath from the HRRR model. And I mean, hey, it shows a big time wind threat with this cluster of storms that surges through north central and central Wisconsin. I mean, you see these waves right here, highlighted colors. This is where that line of storms goes through. I mean, it makes it all the way into Green Bay by the time we wake up tomorrow morning. So, you know, 40, 50, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts are possible, even with these that happen, you know, late tonight into the state of Wisconsin. So be aware in all these states today. If we're talking about what's driving this, just this mid to upper level impulse of energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere. Aloft, we have a flow that supports lift, supports wind energy. So, you know, we take it all the way into this afternoon. Here it is. See this line right here that kind of bobs, and I did not mean to do that. It kind of goes, yep, and now we're everywhere. All right, let's get it back to where we were. All right. Pivotal weather can be kind of finicky, guys, at least for me. But you see how the line kind of goes, and then it sort of goes like almost like a heartbeat. It kind of goes back and forth right in here. This tells us where there's energy. This isobar kind of tells us where there's energy and there's in levels of the atmosphere. So it's directly associated with this impulse of wind aloft, you know, approaching 50 to 60 knots. So this tells us there's energy in the atmosphere that's really creating lift for thunderstorms. So this is kind of like an exit region of this mid-level jazz, what we call. This really just gets the storms going, and the western Dakotas, even areas of like western Wyoming, eastern Wyoming, and then it's just game on. You know, this continues. There's that impulse of energy that'll get those nasty storms going later tonight, and, you know, Minnesota eventually into Wisconsin. And all this flow right here is riding over a very unstable air mass, very moist, warm air mass. And that's when we'll kind of move it to this right here. As far as the CAPE levels, mixed layer CAPE here, a lot of energy in the atmosphere. Surface CAPE is just ridiculous. I mean, it's several thousand joules per kilogram, just absolutely ridiculous. But I like to look at mixed layer CAPE. There's times where you look at the surface base CAPE, but looking at mixed layer CAPE here, the one thing you'll notice is there's not a whole lot of energy driving those, clustering of severe storms in western South Dakota this afternoon, but you would think it's not a whole lot, but 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram mixed layer CAPE is certainly enough. And then it taps into all this energy right into here. I mean, this is CAPE levels well over 4,000 to 4,500 joules per kilogram, just chilling here in southern sections of Minnesota and areas of southeastern South Dakota. Now watch as these, these highlighted colors right here kind of get ate up like Pac-Man. You'll see the storms form. You see those kind of the bubbles forming right here, right here, right here, right here, even down there. That's where finally the atmosphere gets prime enough to pop off a storm. And once it does, it starts to eat up all that energy in the atmosphere. Look, that's a good example of it right there. Hardly no CAPE here, a lot of it here. Storms form, move into that amped up atmosphere energy wise, and then eats up all the fuel in the atmosphere, what we call CAPE. So that's a great kind of demonstration of the storms forming and then kind of just Pac-Manning, if you will, all that energy in the atmosphere. So please be aware in this area today. This is going to be probably our biggest severe weather threat just for the whole entire country as a whole that we've seen in the last several weeks. So if we break down the rest of the U.S. here, the southeast first, rinse and repeat, right? I mean, not a whole lot going on. We're going to have some scattered downpours across the peninsula of Florida. Same thing as what you've seen the last several days. Some downpours possible, even into southeast Georgia, even into the low country of South Carolina. But all in all, not a huge deal. I think as we get into later this afternoon to this evening, I think the higher risk of storms will probably be more so for the western peninsula all the way into the Big Bend of Florida. But, could get some flooding rains out of that. Not expect to be a big deal. But the rest of the southeast, pretty chill, pretty quiet. Well, I don't think it's going to be chilly, but you get what I'm saying. Pretty calm weather today. Not a whole lot going on, guys. So enjoy your Monday. The northeast, a little bit different of a story, but not a widespread storm threat. It's really going to be confined to certain areas. First off, we'll start off early this afternoon. Some downpours, maybe some storms popping up in western Maine. A little bit of northerly flow, I mean, almost straight out the north here. And we could get some storms, some that could be strong to severe in like Connecticut, even some strong to severe storms. Very isolated down here in the Tidewater area, the mid-Atlantic. And this will just flow in from the north and, could bring some scattered showers and storms, and just a closer look to the higher threat level here in southern New England. It doesn't look too bad. We got a big storm firing up out here in southeast Mass. Be careful with that. Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Cape Cod could get some storms, and Rhode Island, get some storms probably this afternoon and this evening. Model guidance is pretty adamant on some storms impacting you guys. Look at the storms over areas of Connecticut, and just anything that forms in this area. It could be strong to severe. Got some storms up here in Vermont, New Hampshire. They're just very isolated. There's going to be areas in this area of the country, it doesn't even get a drop of rain today. So just be aware of it. Large hail, gusty winds, possible some of these storms to get going today. So the south central U.S., I'm going to zoom into Texas here in a second. So I know it's cutting you guys off a little bit down there, but you see the moisture kind of funneling into the Texas coastline. This is from that little tropical disturbance. So it's trying to get going. Nice gnarly mid-level spin. We talked about that, for the last several days on and off on the update on the tropics, but talked about how there was a potential for something sneaky to get going, just not enough time over water. But, we take it to about this afternoon, this evening. We got some showers and storms across New Mexico, Colorado once again, and just the opportunity for some much-needed rain with some of this tropical energy down here in Texas. And just to take a closer look at it here, you see the little spin that it has to it. We get into about midday. This is bringing some beneficial rains into Houston, to the Texas coastline, and we can hope that we can get some rain a little bit further inland into south central Texas, southern Texas around Brownsville, Corpus Christi area. Let's hope that maybe we can get some rain down here I know you guys are getting pretty dry pretty fast after a pretty wet start to your summer. It's really dried out down here. It really has. I think Beryl was really the last widespread significant rain event you guys got, but not everybody got a whole lot of rain from that. So got a sneeze coming, guys. Thank you for everybody said bless you. I appreciate that. But you keep going here, and you get into tomorrow morning, and I mean, you're still going to be dealing with some downpour activity. Tropical moisture kind of continues to surge in from the Gulf of Mexico. So a little bit of rain from that. Across the western U.S., I saw a picture. I think it was out of, I forgot which mountain peak it was. Mount Rainier, maybe. That just had a ton of snow on it already. Just already got a snow base up there. Pretty wild stuff. But, we're going to get into about mid to late morning. We're going to get that energy that gets going here. Look at Wyoming here. I mean, heavy snow potential for those higher mountaintops and kind of like Yellowstone National Park. That energy will actually end up working, west to east and bring some nasty storms that have the potential to unfold for like southeastern Montana, maybe even southern Montana. You see these storms rumbling through that area. I know I haven't really zoomed into that area for you folks, but those storms could be intense that you're seeing right here. We're going to get some storms across Colorado and New Mexico, but everybody else kind of in between. Some rain possible for the extreme Pacific Northwest, extreme northwestern Washington State. Everybody else though, right in the middle of the western U.S., the Rockies, it's pretty quiet. The Southwest pretty quiet. Pretty quiet day and night expected for the most part. Temperatures still hanging on to some nice temperatures up here in the Northeast. 70s, I would say, is the dominant temperatures for today. You get down to the Mid-Atlantic, 80s and 90s. Same thing for the Southeast. You're starting to warm on up now. The Ohio Valley starting to get warm, widespread 90s. The Deep South, pretty warm, 90s. The Midwest, very hot, 90s and 100s. The heat indices are going to be ridiculous in this area for certain cases. It's going to be hotter in Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, I mean, even like Illinois, even like southern Wisconsin than it will be in Texas today. But, still very hot temperatures expected across the plains. It's getting a little bit more comfortable once you get into North Dakota, especially as you're kind of north of this boundary, separating an unstable air mass with a more stable air mass. But, man, look at the west, guys. I mean, feeling like fall. It's nice. Highs just depends on your elevation. Cooler temperatures in this pocket right here in Wyoming and areas of Montana. And not anything too significant heat-wise out here really at all. So enjoy your weather. There is a risk of severe weather tomorrow, guys, and we'll break this down in the next video. A slight risk across pretty much all the Great Lakes region, except maybe northern sections of the UP. But this does include, some big cities. Chicago, Milwaukee, Green Bay, Detroit, Cleveland. So, you guys have that slight risk, level 2 out of 5, and there is a marginal risk around that slight risk. So we'll watch for that. Tornado threat is at a 2% risk here across some Great Lakes regions here. So there is a wind threat, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. And then the hail threat will be there too over the same area of the wind threat. There's a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So we'll break that down in the next video for you folks up here. The update on the tropics, and we'll start off by, just like we always do, from the experts at the National Hurricane Center. Tropical cyclone activity is not expected during the next 7 days. I also want to, and I meant to pull this up, and I apologize for kind of doing this on the fly here, but was doing a podcast last night with Gerald, and it kind of reminded me that I need to show this occasionally. And I'm going to have to try to find it on the fly here. So we might just have to look at this. I have to look for the other graphic here in a bit. And Gerald's probably, my buddy Gerald, he'll watch sometimes. He's probably like, Mitch, this is what you click right here. But if you're thinking, who are you talking about, Gerald? He's a buddy of mine. He runs GM Weather, does the same exact thing as I do. We do a podcast together, and we had one last night. We had deep conversation about the tropics and what's going on there. Why is it so quiet? So check that out. I need to put a link under this video for you folks that are interested. But anyways, this shows the same thing. It's just not as zoomed in. In fact, I might can zoom in a little bit for you. If you notice right here in the Atlantic, from August 28th, which by the way is in 2 days, through September 3rd, They issued this several days ago, I think. Now, yeah, it was issued like the 20th, so almost a week ago. They'll probably have an updated version of this tomorrow, I would assume. But 6 days ago, they were pretty confident. I mean, 60% or higher in this dark red color, this burgundy color here, that we were going to have some sort of tropical cyclone depression, strength of a tropical depression or higher. So, I mean, we would be tracking a system with a legit tropical cyclone, legit low-level circulation. They were pretty confident. We're not sure if that's going to happen now. And then even the 4th through the 10th of September, still pretty decent confident. And just that red area, that's where you have a 40% chance of some sort of tropical depression or higher in strength out here in the Atlantic that we would be tracking. So what's going on out there? Well, this is the morning of the 26th. What I can tell you here is that there is a lot more shower and storm activity ongoing right now in the monsoon trough down here in the main development region, the tropical Atlantic. You got a lot more storm activity ongoing compared to maybe the last few days. So it's not totally void of convection, shower, and storm activity. There's just nothing really consolidating, coming together as of right now. But this looks a little bit more, it looks like there's something a little bit more there now than there was. That's for sure if you compare right now to the last couple of days. So I think all eyes are on this. I mean, I would say that we're in peak hurricane season. I don't think you should probably dub peak hurricane season as one actual day, which I believe is September 10th is the actual day of peak hurricane season. But you kind of look at the 1 to 2 weeks before that and the 1 to 2 weeks after that, in my opinion. And I mean, I certainly think that, we're pretty much in the beginning stages of peak hurricane season right now. But you expect this area out here to start to uptick in activity. So you get this back off and you keep rolling. So what about the euro? Let's take a look at the European model first, right? We're going to start this off by Wednesday evening, and we're just going to focus in on the tropical Atlantic. If you don't know where we're at, this little landmass right here, that is Africa. This is the Leeward Islands, the Windward Islands, the Lesser Antilles, and you're getting into the Caribbean. So, when we get about 48 hours from now, still liking the idea of a lot of tropical moisture down here. So is anything going to consolidate, come together, become a dominant piece of energy, and maybe become an all-out tropical system, tropical cyclone? Well, we get into Thursday, we get into Friday, and we get into Saturday, and there it is. It kind of pops a low pressure right there. And, it could do it before then. All of a sudden we got a 10, 12 millibar low. And I'm starting to like the idea of this. I haven't gave my own personal thoughts on this and when I think something's going to pop up. But I like the idea of something popping up sometime in the last day or two of August. Something that looks, I would say, maybe not a tropical depression, but something that looks like it has the potential to develop, which would make sense if you kind of line it up from the Climate Prediction Center, the experts. If this happens, then you would say, okay, well, that's why they're the experts for a reason, right? But you keep this going, and I really think that there's going to be something right here. This is getting into the afternoon, this coming Saturday, okay? There's going to be potentially something right there. And you can kind of follow it with your eyes here. It can, on and off, pops off an L. And, we get into early next week, like the first few days of September. And that energy, eventually gets into the Caribbean. Is it going to eventually do anything? I don't know. But it's right here. That's it right there. Okay? I would watch this right here. So that's the latest Euro model, guys. Now, what about the GFS? GFS is still running, but I think we have enough of the run to really run the entire run. It's a lot of words of run there. But same thing, guys. We'll start this off by about Wednesday afternoon. It already has an L over some area of energy. And, the energy we are watching is really any of this energy right out here. Is anything going to kind of consolidate, come together? I wouldn't call this one giant tropical wave, but I would call it a pretty large area of unsettled weather out here in the Atlantic. You keep this going, you look at the GFS, and then we get into Thursday morning, and it's starting to latch on to something. Is it going to keep it? We're starting to get into Friday, we're getting to Saturday, and it vanishes. It disappears. Is anything else going to pop up? No, you keep this going, you get into September, you get into the 3rd, you get into the 4th. Latest GFS says no. time. There's nothing going on. So GFS pretty much shows potential with this wave, and it just never fully gets going. It almost looks like it tries to come too far north, and then just probably gets wrapped up with a lot of dry air that's still there in this area right here of the Atlantic. So it never gets going. Now, if you look at the latest icon model, the icon, which I would say you shouldn't push more chips on the icon rather than the GFS Euro. I would say the GFS and the Euro are still the more superior models. But anyways, you keep this going here. It does latch on more so to that energy right in here. We're getting into later this work week. We're getting into Friday. We're getting into Saturday. We're getting into Sunday. And it just fully latches on to this tropical wave and eventually develops some sort of depression or named storm just outside the Lesser Antilles, by literally a week from now. A week from today, the icon says, hey, there's going to be a strengthening tropical system just east of the Leeward Islands. So it's something to watch. Not sure if it's on to something. And guys, I will look at the Euro AI model, but the thing is with this model is it totally lost what it was showing. Remember I showed you it yesterday morning? Well, the very next run after I showed it to you guys, it disappeared. The signal disappeared. So it kind of made me lose respect for this model a little bit. So, that's the thing is this is still kind of a learning model, but it totally lost the wave. I mean, it didn't lose it. It's still there. The energy is still there, but it is just kind of everywhere. So, you look at the European ensemble when you go 1 week out from today, it does show a signal for a wave, but I mean, this is, I would say, if I was just to eyeball this is about half the members out of 51, so 25, 26 members are showing something developing. Now, I'm not actually counting every one of these. Maybe somebody is just watching it, but it looks like it's about half the members. And if you extend this, a couple more days, right, those members that do form do start to strengthen. But it almost looks like it loses a couple members too. It doesn't look like it's as many if I'm just kind of looking at this just right at it. So we'll continue to watch. It seems like we've been talking about the same stuff on the tropics for the last 10 to 14 days. But there's just nothing to really talk about out here. There really isn't. Just I'm going to leave it. I'm going to probably say this in the end of every video. Just be careful what you watch out there on the YouTube, guys. I'm hearing some channels over the last week, putting giant hurricane icons over certain states, and they've been doing it for the last 7 to 10 days. I just know that, I mean, some people get so lost in this kind of stuff that, they lose they get so lost in growth and just, at the end of the day, if we're all just being upfront with you, us YouTubers, we make money off YouTube. So, at the end of the day, if I had to assume without judging anybody, a lot of people, it stems from just trying to get as many views off their videos as possible and make more money on YouTube, even if it takes, putting a gigantic hurricane icon on a state to try to scare people to make people click on it because they're worried about something. So I'm telling you right now, not one single model shows a hurricane hitting anybody in the U.S., not even anybody in the Caribbean. So just be careful what you watch out there. It's a shame. I'm getting more and more annoyed by it as each passing day. Not to the point where I'm going to call anybody out. It's just not necessary. I'm not like that. I'm not trying to put a target on my back or anything like that. But it is annoying because it makes us all look bad. But we're going to continue to pump out the updated information and keep you guys covered. Follow people that you trust. And that's all I got. God bless all y'all. Have a wonderful Monday, and I'll talk to you again soon.